Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another day in my life / what I eat in a day / follow me around / vlog. We should really just call it a vlog. So today I am bringing you along for everything I have been up to. I visited the library, tried a new food truck in town, and honestly, top of the list, I made a lot of really good food. I baked sourdough poppyseed muffins. I made sourdough discard crackers. I made spicy sweet pickles. It was all super delicious. And then last but not least, I decided I wanted to sit down in my car and just have a heart-to-heart chat with you guys. Shout out to all of my patrons. I really appreciate all of you so much that have come over to my Patreon to support us. And for those of you that don't know what Patreon is, I upload exclusive content over there. I recently uploaded a video talking about handling health anxiety. I've talked about mommy stuff. I also tend to be more open on my Patreon. So with all of that being said, let's hop right in. So on this day, we decided to make our way over to Oh Baby, a semi-newish food truck here in town that I had been craving all week, stalking their Instagram and counting down to get tacos. So I've been legitimately daydreaming of eating at this place since everybody mentioned it at PT and said it was incredible. So I'm very excited. Yes. So while we waited for our food, Logie read his Curious George book, and then we got the food, and I was so excited. And immediately when I saw them, I knew that they were not going to disappoint. So we got two of their, how do you say it? Barria, I don't know, tacos. And then we got a crispy chicken taco and nachos on the side with brisket. But it was so good. I actually went to this food truck 3 times in 1 week, and I don't really eat out anymore, very rarely. And it just happened to be that I was here 3 times in this week. This was the first, and you're watching my obsession begin. When we got home, I was super excited to find this package from American Blossom Linens, and I'm not really showing footage of it on my bed today, but these are sheets, and they're really awesome because they are 100% American made, from start to finish. They're organic cotton, and I was just so excited to be getting these. So I'll share more about them in the future, but really pumped when they arrived. And then I checked on Dan, who is continuing to move forward in the construction of our office. So our home is a 3-bedroom home, and we really wanted a separate room to be able to create in. So the fact that Dan is building this is really exciting to me. So on this day, we made our way to our local library. I had finally figured out how to get a library card online, and then we made our way in to pick up some books. Now, I have started working with Logan a little bit on a specific preschool curriculum. I will share a little bit more about that in the future because I've been getting a lot of questions about how we're teaching Logan. And so on this day, I had come to try to find some of the books that are specifically mentioned in the curriculum. Now, unfortunately, I found none of those books. I'm going to have to use their internet service to order books ahead of time, but I still ended up getting a wide array of books for Logan that I was very excited about for him. And it was just really sweet finally being able to dip my toes in our local library, because this is just one of the things I hadn't gotten around to in town. So I knew when I got home I wanted to do some baking. So I started off by melting a bunch of butter on a pan because we decided to start with making these butter crackers. Now, I have yet to make sourdough discard crackers that are actually thebomb.com. It just hasn't happened for me yet. So if you have a favorite recipe, feel free to let me know down below, because this recipe I got from a blog where normally I love all of their recipes, but this one just didn't turn out right. And I'm not sure if it's the recipe or if it was our execution. Either way, that's kind of a spoiler alert as you're watching me make it. But these are just very simple crackers. It really was the texture and the thickness when all was said and done, because I do have to say, as I'm dissing my cracker mixture, it actually tasted really good. It just did not end up being the right consistency or the right thickness. So yeah, I melted up a ton of butter. These are called butter crackers. And then once I had mixed together all of the ingredients, which I believe was just flour, salt, discard, and butter. So very simple ingredients. Like I said, very tasty. We mixed the dough all together to put in the fridge and properly ferment. So then it was time to start making my favorite brown butter sourdough cookies. So I'm currently working on an e-cookbook, which I'm very excited about. You guys have been asking me to do something like this for like almost my entire time on YouTube. I can't believe it's finally coming together. But this cookie recipe is based off of someone else's cookie recipe that I'm going to link down below. What I do is not exactly his recipe, but his is a solid jumping off point. So I will link that recipe down below, but I am going to be including this recipe in my cookbook when I finally release it, which will hopefully be within the next couple of months. Anyways, very excited about that. So I started off by browning my butter. Now, anytime you're using butter in a baked goods recipe, you have a chance to brown your butter, and it really adds a complexity to whatever recipe you're making. It's delicious, and it makes it almost like nutty, and it makes the butter in and of itself kind of sweet. So once I had browned the butter, you don't want to burn it. You want to be really careful and stay near your butter when you're browning it. Then I turned the heat off the pan and then transferred the butter into a separate dish to cool. Then I started mixing the dry elements of the cookie mixture in a bowl. Kind of random, but I've been learning a little bit lately about, I think they call it like the baker's equation, or I don't remember. I say I'm learning about it and I can't remember exactly what it's called. But point being, I've been learning about ratios in baking so that you can kind of design your own recipe, or more specifically for me, I've been trying to learn how to convert regular baked goods into sourdough baked goods, which you will see later in this video because I did that with poppyseed muffins. But it's very interesting because, as you can see, I separated the whites from the yolks for the cookies, and that has to do with hydration in the cookie, like the amount of liquid. So very interesting. I don't know how many of you have done sourdough conversion in from regular baked goods, but it's a very interesting thing to learn, and it kind of opens up like all baked goods to you if you're trying to make them sourdough. So as you can see, Dan actually helped me roll out the crackers because he was around at this point, and he's very good at these detailed type things, including slicing our sourdough bread. He's always the sourdough bread slicer. Anyways, he rolled the dough, and then we put it on the parchment paper and then sliced the dough into crackers. Then we took forks, which I wish we had honestly done like double or triple the holes per cracker, because this also might have been part of the problem, is we didn't want the crackers to really puff up. And I think if we had put more holes, they would have puffed up less.
Daddy, look at all these crackers.
Then we threw them in the oven to bake. Now, while my crackers were baking, I moved on to chopping up my nuts. Now, my recipe for these cookies kind of change every time because the ingredients that I have on hand kind of changes every time, and it's allowed me to really experiment and try different flavors. So today I had pistachios and almonds on hand, so I chopped those up pretty finely-ish. Then I threw some coconut oil into a pan, and then I tossed my nuts into the pan to allow them to start to toast before I candy them. So once my nuts were nice and toasty, I poured in some maple syrup. And as you can see, it starts sizzling right away. I mean, you guys have seen me do this a million times. I don't know why I'm explaining it again. You just kind of stir the nuts in all the maple syrup, and the heat starts to cook down the maple syrup to become very sticky, and it makes your nuts candied, and it's amazing. And you want to make sure once you stir that in, you take them off the heat. But yeah, so I did that. Then I moved on to mixing together my brown butter and my white and brown sugar in my mixer. At this point, my crackers were ready to come out of the oven, and so I took those out. Now, this is the point, back to the cookies, where you add the sourdough discard. So once the butter and the sugar is mixed together, I measured in my discard and my vanilla. Now, because you're using discard and not active sourdough starter, one thing that I like to do is let my cookies ferment in the fridge for anywhere from like 1 to 3 days, because that really, to my understanding, really reactivates kind of the discard starter situation and allows all of the dough to really ferment so that they're actually properly fermented sourdough cookies, not just cookies that taste like sourdough because there's discard in there. Does that make sense? Because the discard already has the sour taste. But if you want the dough to really ferment, you have to let it sit. So once I had mixed everything together, my dry ingredients in with everything, then I threw in like a handful or 2 of hemp hearts, some mini dark chocolate chips, and then my candied nuts. Now, I usually love putting date pieces in. I totally forgot and I regret that because they melt really perfectly like caramel pieces in cookies. But as usual, this batch was incredible. All right, guys, so I was like hyped level 12 to make these muffins. And basically, I was going through Costco with the boys a couple of weeks ago, and Logan kept reaching for muffins. And then Dan started saying how much he loves the Costco muffins, but we don't buy them because they're full of a lot of ingredients that we try to avoid. And so it suddenly occurred to me, wait, I bet I could make you these Costco muffins, but like with way simpler ingredients. So I looked it up, and sure enough, people have written blog posts on how to make copycat poppyseed Costco muffins at home. And so I found a recipe that had good ratings, and then I decided this was going to be the recipe that I finally learned how to convert a recipe into sourdough. So I watched some videos and it made a lot of sense. I can talk about this more in upcoming videos. I converted this recipe, also swapped out an ingredient, and just honestly crossed my fingers. I was like, is this going to even work? And let me tell you, people, these ended up tasting identical to the Costco muffins. But next time you're at Costco, go ahead and pick them up and look in the back and see how many ingredients are in those muffins. It's kind of crazy because our mix of muffins, which by the way, at this point, I was wrapping up the dough to allow it to ferment overnight in the fridge. By the way, this recipe will be in my cookbook as well, and I will talk to you guys more about this in the future. But yeah, so many ingredients in the Costco recipe, so few in ours. So we put it in the fridge to ferment overnight, and then Dan helped me cut up some cucumbers that we had on hand to make some quick refrigerated pickles. So once he had sliced up the cucumbers, then he sliced up our red onion as well. Then I took the onions and I cut them down because I didn't want them to be, like I just wanted them in smaller pieces. So once I had cut those down and I had all my cucumbers and onions in my colander, I guess I forgot to get this footage, but I put a ton of salt all over the cucumber and the onion and allowed it to sit there and just draw out the moisture for about an hour. And while that was sitting, I made this brine of vinegar, water, garlic, honey, and red pepper flakes. And I let that come to a boil for about a minute, and then I turned way down the heat, and I think just let it simmer for a few minutes. And then it sat there for the rest of the hour while the salt worked on the cucumbers and the onions. So after an hour, I rinsed the salt off of the cucumbers and the onions, and then you're gonna watch me like kind of be a fool here. I just like could not figure out how I wanted to get all the water off the cucumbers, so I just put them back and forth on the paper towels. But it took me a while to figure out how to get the liquid off of the cucumbers and onions. And then I packed them in jars, and I had to kind of go back and forth here. This was also kind of a hot mess, and figure out how I could have enough brine, or whatever we want to call it, for both jars, because it did not make enough to fill up 2 jars. And I don't know, this is just what we ended up with. But I will say, people, it was so good. You'll see me use these pickles later in the video. So even though my muffin dough was fermenting in the fridge overnight, I did not have my poppy seeds in there because I had read weird stories of people like dying from putting poppy seeds in water and making a tea, something with the opiates. And I just felt like fermenting them freaked me out a little bit. I just wanted some nice muffins. So after I had the dough ferment in the fridge, I poured it into this bowl, and then I added in my baking powder and my baking soda, as well as then I added my poppy seeds. And I just feel like that was a really good move to make. So then I mixed everything together in my mixer, just enough to make sure I felt like everything was mixed in. I didn't like overly mix it, you know, like I would for bagels. And then I scooped my dough into the muffin trays and filled them up to about the halfway point, maybe a little bit higher than halfway, but not too much, because, you know, you don't want your muffins to overflow and spill all over the pan. And I was already feeling really hopeful because the dough smelled amazing. But, you know, spoiler alert again, I just couldn't believe how good they turned out. I baked them for 20 minutes and then pulled them out, popped them out of the actual tray. Guys, they're so good. I actually ate one again a few minutes ago here before recording these voiceovers. And I just couldn't believe how perfect they turned out. We ended up bringing some over to our neighbor as well, because when I posted on Instagram, she was like, "Those are my favorite." I'm like, "We're coming." So we brought the neighbor some poppy seed muffins, and we actually brought my whole family. We went next door and brought my mom, my dad, and my brother a poppy seed muffin for Valentine's Day. And Logan said, "Happy Valentine's Day. I love you," as he handed them out. It was really sweet. All right, so I mentioned that you would be seeing my pickles again, and so here we are. On this day, I cut my romaine lettuce into thin strips, and then I had some leftover chickpeas that I had like soaked and boiled a few days prior, and so Logan helped me peel a bunch of my chickpeas and add them to my salad. I did not expect him, by the way, to be able to peel my chickpeas, but he really wanted to help me, and he did it. So then I sliced up some salami. I felt very unsure of like what to eat for lunch this day, and this was really like me just pulling some things together, and it turned out amazing. So then I grated up a little bit of cheddar cheese that I had left. This was the point where genius hit me, and I decided to pull out a bunch of my pickles that I had made the night before, and I just cut them up to throw on top of the salad. And honestly, they're a big part of what made the salad delicious. I forgot to tell you guys, the main vinegar that I used in the pickles was apple cider vinegar. So I really liked that, considering they're not like properly fermented, but I feel like apple cider vinegar is just really good for you in general. So even though the pickles had apple cider vinegar on it, by the way, I had just sliced up some apple and put it on. I made a really quick dressing. It's my favorite quick dressing of just avocado oil and balsamic vinegar. And it's quick, it's delicious, and I loved it. Hi guys, so I'm hopping into this video to give a little bit of a life update. There's been a lot that's gone on, as you guys have seen in my day of my lives in the last couple of months, between my sister getting married, which is so exciting, my knee getting messed up, dislocated, and I'm still currently in PT. I'm getting better every day, but I have a long ways to go. And then Logan turning 3 and then magically becoming body trained and like becoming a better sleeper instantly. It's kind of crazy. A lot has gone on. And I wanted to just kind of hop in here and chat with you guys a little bit about, you know, my injury, health anxiety, which I talked about health anxiety over on my Patreon last week. So if you want to hear me give more of like an in-depth, I don't know, how I keep my head in the right space while dealing with a health issue and just how I've dealt with health anxiety in general, if you want to check that out, I have a more, like I said, in-depth video over on my Patreon. But I wanted to talk a little bit with you guys here today. I'm in the truck. We're actually going to be going to the library in a little bit, but Dan is taking Logan on a walk around the neighborhood, and so I thought I would hop in here and chat with you guys. I kind of disappeared a little bit from the internet over the last 2 months because December I was planning on slowing down a lot for my sister's wedding. And then January, obviously, I've been recovering from the knee injury. And it really got me thinking about how blessed I feel and how lucky I feel and how grateful I feel to be self-employed. Now, a lot has changed in my life in the last couple of years. And I have to say this, going into this thought, I want you to know that I'm telling you guys this from a perspective of wanting to help you and encourage you. And I do realize that I am very blessed. I'm very lucky. I am very privileged. I'm very grateful. I'm very all of the words. So know that at the top. And I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea because Dan and I are not swimming in money. Like, I have definitely been more wealthy at other points in my life, but I will also say that we've definitely been more poor at other points in our life. And so I'm throwing all that out there just to, I don't even know, disclaimers, giving a little bit of perspective or thoughts before I share a main place where my head has been at over the last couple of weeks. And that really is, I guess, circling back, it's been a place of gratitude that I have the ability to slow down and heal without insane ramifications. Are there ramifications? Yes. Do things take a hit from me slowing down? Do we take a hit financially from both of us slowing down? Because we have both slowed down a lot. I, for those first few weeks, could hardly even really move a whole lot. And so Dan has really been helping to take care of me and also obviously Logan. A lot of people have asked, since we left Nashville, what are you guys doing? Or what does Dan do? And I guess now is the time for me to kind of explain a little bit more. I am still a full-time content creator. We are still full-time content creators because Dan very much helps me keep that ship going and afloat. There's a lot to content creation beyond just the content creating that has to be taken care of in order to actually make a living doing it. I don't even know what you would call it, clerical management oversight type stuff. But Dan is also really good with equipment as well. We've talked about this in the past. So he is the one that has helped make pretty much every purchasing decision we've ever made for any of our equipment, cameras, computers, mics, all of it. Because he is much more of an engineer mind, understands how things works. And he also has an artistic background, as being a musician. So all of that being said, I have been filled with extreme gratitude over the last few weeks that we are self-employed and we have had the ability to make a decision for our family that's best for our family, that's needed for our family without losing everything, getting fired from our jobs. And, there's a lot of ways to, approach things in life. Some people keep health savings accounts. If there's ever an emergency, then they can pause things. But even still, there's ramifications in life, right? And there's sick days that people can take from jobs. But in general, I feel like when you own the business that is employing you, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of what you're doing in your day-to-day life, what your workload looks like, when you're showing up, when you're leaving, when you're able to take breaks, all of that. And it really just has hammered this point home in my head, something that I've believed in for so much of my life. And that is that ownership or proprietorship is very important. Now, if you've been watching my channel from the beginning, you know that this is the way that I've thought for forever. So this is not Nikki with 1 million and something subscribers telling you just start a business. Even though if you're paying attention to my numbers at all, my views definitely go like this over I've been doing this for 10 years. There's a whole lot of up and downs that happen on my channel and different seasons of views. So you may not even be looking at me like that, but you might be looking at me oh great, the famous YouTubers, pseudo famous YouTubers telling me to start something. But I have had this mindset since before YouTube existed. If you've been following me for a long time, then you know that I actually used to own a dance company. So that was the first job I ever had. I ran a dance studio for homeschoolers. I taught dance for 5 years out of my home, and it was really successful. I was just talking about this with Dan last night. At one point, I was running classes. They were hour-long classes from 9 a.m. till 1 o'clock, like Monday through Wednesday. And at one point, I think that might have actually been Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday. And then I was employing my sister, and it turned into a whole thing where we were doing like massive recitals, and we were renting out local performance venues to put on recitals. And I learned so much from that whole experience because I had to orchestrate everything. I had to figure out, what are the costumes they're going to wear? How are they going to afford the costumes? Like, do we have the costumes made? Do we pre-order the costumes? If they're going to be made, who's going to make them? How much will it be per costume? What is the cost of the venue to rent? Do we need a stage manager? Do we need a lighting person? Do we need a sound person? I'll probably MC. Who's going to print up the programs? Where do we get the tickets printed? Like, all of the things. And I think that was some of the best education that I had growing up, because I did that from ages 14 to 19. And then I worked some random performance jobs for years, and I was doing other random things, commercials, indie movies, things like that. And then got onto YouTube multiple years later. And so I very much have this mindset of ownership being a really positive thing. Now it's been harder the last 2 years because when we were canceled, like, I don't want to say everything was taken from us, because it wasn't, and that's dramatic, but it was a heavy hit. And it's been vulnerable feeling to even talk about it, because to be honest, like when people go, oh, just let it go, stop upset, it's like, we're kind of still in it. It's almost hard to just like completely forget or drop it, because we're still reestablishing our life after we got hit by like a major, philosophical hurricane or whatever we want to call it, earthquake. We're still kind of reestablishing our life. So not only are we planning on not stopping like our presence in the metaverse, because I don't think the metaverse is going anywhere, but on top of that, Dan has now been working his own business, which we may talk about more in the upcoming year. He's still very much in the beginning phases of it, and it's been going well, but he's still building it. And so it's been weird to think about, like, I feel like my channel, my whole time on YouTube, I would like intermittently talk about encouraging people to start their own businesses. In the early days of YouTube, I made some videos that had a lot of views for back then, talking about how I was able to make a full-time income on YouTube. And I broke down everything. I shared all of the information because I truly do believe in the concept of ownership and people pursuing building kind of their own thing. And it's hard. And that's where we go back to the beginning, this idea of like, I realize that I'm privileged and blessed and, like I said, lucky. I use like all of the words kind of interchangeably because I'm just like, whatever, guys, you get what I'm saying. I'm really, really grateful. I get that. And that's truly how I feel. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of people that don't start things because they've got too long of a list or too high of expectations as to what that means and what needs to be done for them to start something, versus taking what's in front of them right now, working with what they have and building off of that. I mean, a great example, right, is a YouTube channel. Like, how many people think that they need the perfect equipment to start? It's like, you don't. Use your phone. Like, figure it out. There might even be editing software at a library now. Like, you build on what you have versus looking at people that are ahead of you and then like being jealous. Like, must be nice that you have all this stuff. It's like, you don't know where they began. I mean, that's how I began, on my phone. And that's still a blessing. Like, not everyone has a phone, but you start with what you have, where you're at, and you build up from there. But that being said, backing up, it's felt like a very vulnerable thing to talk about over the last 2 years because it's felt so, I felt so shifty, right? So like, whoa, we're not standing on solid ground. Like, we're still really settling into our home, still really reestablishing our content presence online. And then, like I mentioned, Dan is in the process, which I just realized he's talking to someone. Oh, that's a neighbor. Him and my brother and Logan are all out talking to a neighbor right now that's driving by. And it's still in the building process. So, that's why because of that, because everything doesn't feel settled, it feels vulnerable and a little scary at moments when I've wanted to talk about it. But that being said, this is kind of just like a random update. I'm healing. I'm getting a little bit better every day, but I probably still have a couple of months of healing ahead of me just to kind of go back to feeling more normal would be my guess, but we'll see. I mean, I could get better a lot faster than that, or it could turn out that there's something else going on in my knee that we don't realize. But my gut says that it's going to take a couple of months to really get back to some semblance of like feeling normal, if that makes sense. But really, it's just, I've been thinking so much lately about how grateful I am to own a business and how grateful I am to you guys for watching my content. And I also wanted to turn that into, like I've been saying this whole time, an encouragement to you to, if this is something like, if business ownership, proprietorship, however we want to use it, the word, is something that sounds like a dream to you or enticing or exciting to you, I want to encourage you to start where you are right now, with what you have, where you're at, and build on it. It is, once you have the experience, how do I word this? This is the best I can do. Once you have the experience of building a business up, you realize afterwards, at least in my opinion, certain things that you kind of have to do in order to make it happen. And then you also realize that sometimes when you're doing those things, it doesn't feel like it's actually going to happen. You're like, this isn't going to work. This is going to fail. What am I going to do? But then you keep following it. You keep putting in the legwork. Did you see them? They're all like driving by and Logan's running. Oh, that's so funny. You start to realize that even though it feels like this isn't going to work, this isn't going to happen, if you keep showing up, you start to notice, oh, things do happen. And I learn certain things, and they're just certain repeatable steps that kind of unfold when you're launching a business. And I am in the process technically of launching a whole other business that, I mean, it's not really a whole other business, but it feels like a whole other business because I've never done anything like this. And that is that I am building a course for you guys. And I've been working on this for literally months. And honestly, I probably have a couple more months ahead of me. Like, I'm actually hoping that the healing time of my knee happens to line up with the structuring and the release of my course. And I'm also probably going to be doing some coaching because I've been getting some very interesting messages about coaching, and my mind has kind of become open to that whole world as well, as I've realized, like, wait a minute, I like engaging with people in that way. Duh, I'm on the internet. I like talking to people, but it's different. It's like, I'm alone in my car right now. You guys aren't here. So even though it is a people thing, and like, it's not as much, especially nowadays. Like, I used to do meetups and events and stuff like that. And I don't really do it anymore, or do any of that anymore. But this whole course coaching thing that I'm building around wellness and holistic health and mindset around food, that's what really the course and the coaching I'm thinking is going to be centered around when I launch, is taking focus and hard work. And I'm noticing that it's the same patterns are presenting themselves as they did in my previous 2 big projects and businesses that I owned. So when I taught dance from 14 to 19, there were patterns in there that happened that presented themselves and showed up again when I launched my YouTube channel. Hurdles that I had to get over that were like the same hurdles. And now, building my course, I'm noticing it's the same thing. Now, you might be like, what do you mean? What are some of those hurdles? Some of those hurdles include showing up to do the work when there's no reward. And by no reward, I mean twofold. There's no monetary reward. I've been working on this for months, and it's all in the hopes that one day I'm going to like get paid for this work. But you never really know, right? It's all a gamble to some degree. Here's the thing though, side note, as a business owner, I believe in the gamble that I place in myself. Like, I bet on myself because I believe in myself. It's also not from a big-headed position. I also believe in God. I know that sounds weird. Like, you mean you don't believe in God if you work for other people? No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that I feel like it's a good thing to be an owner of a business. I think that there are not enough people taking ownership and proprietorship over their own means of income. And I think that God gave me a set of skills, and I'm trying to do the best I can to work with what I have in front of me. And I believe that I'm going to finish and follow through, and that God is going to guide me through it. And hopefully I'll be able to influence you guys in a really positive way and help guide you guys. And then hopefully that'll just come back to me and I'll benefit from that. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully it's a symbiotic thing where I can help people and encourage them and uplift them. And then I can make an income from this new business. But my point is, it's the same thing with starting a dance business, with starting a YouTube channel, with building this course. I was looking for the word. Is it class, course, coach? What is it? Course, class. That I'm hitting the same things, these feelings of doubt, these feelings of like, I don't want to do this. And then also these feelings of like, no payback for my work. Like I said, monetarily, but then also I will say what's different about this than even like YouTube or teaching dance is you kind of get these like dopamine hits on YouTube every time you upload. So even though I have been consistent on YouTube for over a decade, it's different because it's not a massive project, and I get that pleasure reward every time I upload and I get to engage with you guys. And with the course, I have to just keep showing up, stay focused on what I'm trying to convey and teach, and then just wait for the day where I finally get to release it and show you guys and talk to you. And it takes a little bit of that delayed self-gratification and focus to follow through and build something. Now, there's a podcast that my friend Anna turned me on to called Bright Hearth, and I hate this phrase. We're going to say it anyways. They're very Christian. I don't like that phrase because it's like judging someone's. But, some people are more like laid back about their faith, and some people are like, it's guiding every step in their life. They're really plugged into their church, yada, yada. So point being, these people are the latter. And I really enjoy their podcast. I think they have so much wisdom every episode that they put in this, in the episodes, and I garner so much from them. And one of the things in one of their recent episodes, actually, I don't know if it's recent because I was binging, so I was listening to old episodes, but one of the things that they talked about is they claimed that when America gained its independence, supposedly 80% of the citizens in America owned the means for which they earned their income. So either they were trade workers, or they owned property that they were maybe renting out, or they had a business at their home. I mean, I've heard people, and it might have been the same podcast, that supposedly up until basically World War II, the government kind of saw every home as like its own factory with like a driveway, because homes were so productive and fruitful with gardens and, having babies and having some kind of business or trade that they ran out of their home. And what has since happened, it seems, since World War II is everything has become so much more centralized. So, I mean, now homeschooling is kind of actually gaining in popularity, but everything is kind of outside of the home. Everybody goes to work somewhere. Not everybody, right? I'm speaking in generalizations. They go to school. They go here. And it doesn't seem like it was always like that. And especially from this idea of ownership, that's something that like when they were talking about it, it just really resonated with me. And kind of a big part of their point was that when you own something, it allows your family to have a lot more flexibility in terms of how they structure their life and what they are there for in their family versus what they aren't there for. They can kind of pick and choose a little more when you're the one that owns it. And that's really kind of the point of all of this. I wanted to give an update and say, I'm getting better. My knee is getting better a little bit every day. And that's very exciting. And your prayers mean so much to me, guys. Thank you, because this was obviously shocking. If you've been watching my channel for a long time, you've seen me do like chronic pain videos. You guys know I've had a really long journey with injuries and joint problems. And so there have been moments where this has been really hard. And so your prayers and your kind messages seriously mean a lot to me. But on that note, it really did have me thinking over the last month and a half how grateful I am for this, for you guys, for just the journey that the Lord has brought me on in terms of exposure to owning businesses. And the fact that my mom exposed me so young too to owning my own business, I think it's very scary and it's very unfathomable for a large chunk of people as to how you can build and run your own thing. But in my perspective, I'm not even kidding you guys, I actually think in some ways, especially in this economy right now, it's actually easier to start and own your own business than it is to become employed, because there are a limited number of jobs. And I just think getting a job the traditional way sounds really hard. Totally plausible, but just there's a limited number. Versus when you're starting your own thing, I think it leaves the door more open for you to look around your community and go, okay, where is there a need that's not being filled? And where is there a passion or at least an interest that I have that can line up with that need and hopefully fill it and do it well for people? And that's really probably the biggest piece of closing advice I have for you. If you're like feeling jazzed by all of this and you're thinking about ownership, proprietorship, whatever word we want to use, look around your community or on the internet, dude. There's so much untapped, I think, potential on the internet, and there are so many ways to make money online because you're essentially reaching the whole world, not literally, but it's such a larger pool. But look around and see, is there something that I could do, that I could help with, that I could serve well, that's really needed? And how could I dip into that now? So once you get your wheels turning, avoid coming to the answer of the need and then going, oh, but I can't because of X, Y, and Z. I don't have the money to invest in X, Y, and Z. I would need this. I would need that. I think a lot of the times it's not even true. And there are ways to essentially put building blocks on your decisions as you move forward in your business that you don't have to jump to like I said, like having, now we own 2 DSLRs. We used to own 3 and we literally gifted one to a friend. We have a separate 1080 or 4K, not 1080p. We have a separate 4K Sony camera. I have 3 different microphones, but I just want to say again, 10 years ago when I started on my phone. Actually, that's not true. I forgot. I'm sorry. I started on my laptop. I filmed on my webcam. And then I felt like that camera and sound was really bad. And so I was like, I'll just film on my phone. So then that's what I did. So yeah, this is random. And I don't know if this was annoying, but I just wanted to put this in here to just touch base with you guys, say that I am doing okay. Say that if you would like to hear more about my inner thoughts around health anxiety, and that's something that might bless you, that video is up on my Patreon. And I don't know, fam. I gotta take my kid to the library though now. All right, guys, so that is it for this video. If you liked it, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It really helps to support my channel. And leave me a comment down below, even if it's just for the algorithm, even though I would actually like to hear from your heart, but you know what I mean. I appreciate the support, and I will, God willing, see you guys back here soon with another new video. Bye, guys.